Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again. And I really want to thank you for coming out to Anchorage, Alaska, and meeting with our Native leadership. It was an important meeting. I know they very much appreciate it. I wanted to follow up on an issue that came up in that meeting and that I and Senator Murkowski and Don Young have subsequently written you about, and that's the issue. As you know, under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act of 1971, and then consistently several other federal laws, it's been clear under federal law that Alaska Native corporations are eligible to participate in the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program as certified by the SBA. Further, the DOT regulations have been implemented that recognize the ANC eligibility based on the certification of the SBA. And since 2009, SBA has recognized the self-certification process is appropriate for ANCs given their consistent federal law designation as minority and economically disadvantaged businesses, enterprises. What we discussed in Anchorage, what we followed up and wrote you about, is that there's this process now that's beginning where some of the states are not recognizing this SBA process. It's creating kind of 50 different bureaucratic hurdles. And in response to the letter that Congressman Young and Senator Murkowski and I sent you, you stated that DOT will consider guidance to states on the ANC participation, and we appreciate that. But your response noted that the department has chosen not to recognize SBA's certification process, in particular self-certification. So as you can imagine, this is a little confusing to me because your own regulations recognize SBA certification, and the SBA is recognized self-certification as appropriate, but then there seems to be a recent internal DOT policy change that doesn't recognize what the SBA is doing. So can you work with us to iron out that internal inconsistency? It certainly seems like there's something amiss where two federal agencies are not talking from the same sheet of music. And in your development of guidance in consideration of this issue, I'd like your assurance to work with us to make sure that there's uniformity across the 50 states in recognition of ANC eligibility, which the SBA clearly already does, and federal law in a zillion different statutes requires.
We will work with you to clarify this. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that was a big wind-up, but we've been, and I know it's a little specific, but we did raise this in Anchorage. We raised it in a letter, and there just seems to be this internal inconsistency between the SBA, federal law, and what you're doing.
Good.
So I appreciate your commitment on that. Let me turn to another topic. Senator Blumenthal touched on it, and the chairman and many others were focused on regulatory reform in terms of the implementation of the FAST Act. And as a matter of fact, in a hearing several months ago, and you and I talked about how long it takes to permit a bridge in America, which is a disaster, 6 to 7 years. Recent articles, one, and I'd like to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman, a Wall Street Journal editorial called The Highway to Bureaucratic Hell.
Without objection.
And another one by Lawrence Summers from the Boston Globe called Why Americans Don't Trust Government. These lay out bridges that are being permitted, not new bridges, but just to be repaired. So the Bayonne Bridge that connects New Jersey to Staten Island, 5 years just to raise the bridge. The Anderson Memorial Bridge in Cambridge, Massachusetts, 5 years just for the permitting I'm talking about. So I think the FAST Act scratches the surface, but I think there's so much more we can do. There's, as you know, Mr. Secretary, 61,000 structurally deficient bridges in America. And one of the reasons our economy's not moving, clearly, is because we can't build infrastructure because it takes 5 to 10 years to permit a road or permit a bridge, even a bridge that we just want to repair, not even expand. So there's a lot of different ideas here. One of the things that I think is a good idea is to, if you're just repairing a bridge, to waive the permitting requirements because you're not you're not hitting the ecosystem of the environment. Are there areas that you have in terms of other things that we can do besides what's in the FAST Act to get to what I think is a real problem for America? And if you were able to streamline permitting of structurally deficient bridges, you'd probably get 99% approval on that from most Americans. What are some of your ideas, and would you be in favor of waiving NEPA requirements for just maintenance on bridges?
Well, I'll tell you that one of the secrets of the last 8 years has actually been an expansion of categorical exclusions, which is one way to move projects more quickly through the process.
But it's very narrow.
And so we've actually gone pretty substantially. I think may get this wrong, so I'll send you an RFQ that will give you the actual number. But I believe it was something like 93% CEs before, and we're closer now to like 96 or 97%. I would also say a couple other things that are being attempted at the state level that are helpful. And by the way, it's not altogether always clear whether it is state or federal permitting requirements that tie these things up.
Yes, sir, couldn't agree with you.
But also there's technology now that states are using. I'll give you one example. In Massachusetts, they were able to install, I think it was 14 bridges over a weekend because the bridges were prefabricated. And so they're actually able to knock out the old bridge, slide the new bridge in, and have it ready by Monday morning. And so these technologies are ones that I think will also help us speed up the construction time. But I think it is absolutely true that when the government promises a project and it happens relatively quickly, the public gains confidence. And when it takes decades to get projects done, people lose confidence.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to submit for the record an additional question on Section 5403 of the FAST Act, which is focused on making sure our veterans get expedited into the commercial trucking industry, and I'll have questions on how we're doing on follow-up on that. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Moran.